Happy New Year's Eve 2020. And welcome to this, our 6th episode of Fabrically Speaking Live. Today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable little Minky sweatshirt for my equally adorable little Tinkerbelle. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful New Year's Eve, and I'm sure you're as excited as I am to say goodbye to 2020. When making a dog little outfit, you have to think about, where's the puppy going to wear this? Are you going to take it for a walk? And if you are, then you got to consider where the leash is going to go. Is it going to be able to come out the back or the front? In the case of my dog, I use a no-pull little harness, and so I apply a buttonhole to the front so that she can still be wearing this without getting strangled by the actual sweatshirt. Please go ahead and write your name and where you're viewing from in the comments, and I'm going to go ahead and pop in there real quick. It's just me here today. Fiona, you were just playing with your creative feet. So just a little update. Last New Year's Eve, I made Tinkerbelle a sweater because we had a lot of snow. For those of you who don't know, it snows in Arizona. It does. We're a mile high in the Prescott area, so we do get snow. And each time it snows, I end up thinking, my poor little dog, she's down there in the cold and she needs something to wear. So this is what I made her last year. And I just used Minky on the actual neck. And the rest is sweater. And I found that she was getting itchy from it. And she just couldn't wait until I took it off. So I'm very happy to announce that with Minky, considering all of her blankets are all Minky, I thought, well, maybe Minky would be a better option for her. Hi, Lorinda. Red Dog Mama's back. And Creative Grammy. Hi, you guys. Hi, Donna. D. Jr. from Alabama. And hi, Barbara. Happy New Year. Not yet. Tomorrow, right? Yay. You had 30 minutes to remember why you were in the grocery store? Okay. Well, I always try to be ready for these live events, but I'm not always ready, and sometimes you guys find it entertaining. Like last week, I actually designed a pattern while live with you guys, and I couldn't believe how long you guys stayed on with me. But today, I actually made one first, so I'm a little bit more prepared. Oh, you got your video reminder. Yay! You guys are learning. So if you can't see your name and your picture in the chat where you're typing, and you're inside of YouTube, it's possible that you never uploaded a picture of yourself in YouTube. So you might want to create that for yourself. Not necessarily right now while I'm live, but create your little icon. And I think they also let you know, or let you choose what name you put in there right now as you're live, or as I'm live. And if you're watching from Facebook and you're inside of my group, Happy New Year, Tina, from Texas. So if you're in my Facebook group, there's 3 little dots above on the right-hand side, and you click on that, and then allow, or you look at group apps, and then you click on that and allow StreamYard to view what you have already set up on your actual Facebook profile. That's your avatar, whatever picture you have up there right now. And it will pull your name, whatever name you have on YouTube or Facebook. There's too many different places. Okay, so I'm just loving this. What I'm really excited about is that she hasn't gotten the chills once. And that is very rare for this one because she's so tiny. And she's losing some of her hair because she's 15 now. And she's part Yorkie and part Jack Russell, and even part of her little puffiness that she had from the Yorkie in her is not coming back anymore. So I really want to make sure she's warm and no itching and no chills. And she has not come up to me and, you know, acted like she's miserable. She doesn't act like she's going, oh, thank you for scratching my back. So I'm thinking Minky is a winner for little outfits for our puppies. There we go. You go back to your spot. Okay, so when I mentioned using Minky last week, one of you typed in that it's miserable to work with. It's really, really messy. And it is if you just cut it. But if you know the secrets to making it not so messy, you might not mind using it. One of the things that I do is I use hairspray. Think of Minky as a bunch of hair, and if you, I actually have my cell phone set up so I can do some really close-up shots. So I'm going to invite my cell phone in, see how this goes. And here we go. So this is the Minky, and you can see that it just starts to fall apart all by itself, and it gets all over, and it actually it tickles and makes me itch. So here I have an area where I sprayed hairspray, and you can see how nice and clean that cut is. There's nothing falling off of it. And here where I just cut it without hairspray, and you can see it just falls off. So even rubbing it stays on. So that's one trick to using this fuzzy material. Another is our stick. Nope, it's not stick. Sorry, the iron turned on or it's going to shut off. One of the things we're giving away today, because yes, every Thursday I give away goodies. My dog just ran under the camera and moved the wires, and I was a little bit nervous that she would turn us off here. So one of the giveaways is our Hold Light Stabilizer. This is a stabilizer that you can use to draft patterns, and this is what I use on any fabric that actually frays, like taffeta. If you just look at taffeta, you can see it just unraveling right before your eyes. So before you cut out a pattern, you actually trace your pattern on the Hold Light and save your pattern, so you never have to actually cut the real pattern. And this pattern is then ironable. It irons onto your fabric, and that's what I have right here. We're also giving away the fabric cover up, a pack of primary stabilizers, and this allows you to embroider on your Minky without the Minky nap showing through your stitches, and you can do that with the Octi hoops or with your standard embroidery sewing machine. I thought I had another giveaway. Oh yes, and we're going to go ahead and give away the liquid-based glue, a bottle of that to go with it. So make sure that you see your name in the comments, because whoever comments the most does the most activity. We then throw a certain number of you into a way of sorting through, and then we pick from however many of you, whatever. It's something like that. That's not a very good way of describing it. We do a drawing. But yet last week's winner, we couldn't let her know because she was not signed in to YouTube while watching. So make sure you sign in to YouTube if you're not right now, so that if you win, I can let you know that you won. We did announce it in our newsletter, which released this morning. And hi, Mary from Virginia. And wow, the feed's moving fast. Donna says everyone needs to get the glue, and it's really not a glue, is it? It's water-soluble stabilizer. And do you know what it does with Minky? If you glue two Minky fabrics together with this, it locks the bias in the fabric and stops it from stretching while you sew with it. If any of you have an overlock machine and love it, I totally agree with you on how wonderful they are, but many people buy them and then they don't know how to use them. If you have trouble using your serger, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Or if you just look at it and go, hi, serger. And I haven't used it in so many years. I really need to service it because I will be showing you some serger techniques on my new show, Fabrically Speaking. If you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Clare Rowley, and I'm the inventor of a line of sewing machine products called KLIPit. And we're going to be using them today to make this Minky sweatshirt, and we're not going to need a serger because the Satinedge Foot kind of replaces the need for one. And we're not going to have any exposed seams anyway when we're finished. So this is actually the pattern, and it's fused onto the Minky, so you can see that the clean cut that I was able to do, and there's no fuzzies sticking out from that either. So it will control the fuzz until you go to sew it. This is the leg hole. And then there's certain points that you need to pay attention to or be mindful of. Donna, I don't know what you're saying you're sorry for. But we all say that we're sorry way too much. If you didn't do anything wrong, there's nothing to be sorry for. It's really difficult. Oh, Better Days. You were last week's winner, Better Days. I don't know who you are. Yay. I can't remember what you won, but you won some goodies last week. So you need to email us at info@creativefeet.com so that I can actually... Don't put your contact information in here. So, yay! Better Days! What is your name? Well, you don't have to say it. But if you wanted to, we wouldn't mind. Okay. You like my necklace? I do too. I love it. And you know, with nowhere to go these days, I decided I would dress up for New Year's Eve to spend time with you guys. Hi, Mary. A friend of yours just gave you a serger, and it is a little bit overwhelming if you've never used one before. My first foot that I invented was a serger foot for sewing beads, and I wrote a book. It was a long time ago, and a company copied the foot and published the book. That's when I knew I was an inventor, and I stopped being careless with what I created after that. It was a lesson learned. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to try to keep up with the chat, and you guys are chattier today than usual. Thank you for that. Okay. So there are things that we need to consider, and I'm going to bring up an illustration here. Still getting the hang of all this. When you're making something for your dog, you have the neck diameter. That's a really important diameter that you need to pay attention to, or you're never going to get it on the dog. It needs to be bigger than the dog's head because it has to go over the dog's head. As this particular pattern does not have a zipper or a button or Velcro, it is a slip over the head, then insert the paws pattern. And the leg diameter is important. You need to make sure that your dog has room to run and no circulation being cut off. The neck will measure less than the hem because the neck is smaller than the abdomen on the dog. And if you cut the strips for the leg and the hem with the stretch, and this will be a pattern. I just drafted this morning really quick for you. But the pattern will be released inside of the school for free for you guys to use. But it's going to require math from you in order to fit your particular dog. I say the most important measurement for Tinkerbelle is the measurement or the distance between her legs, because she's so small and her legs are so fragile that she can't have a lot of space in between there. So know that this is just the first little illustration showing you the pattern, kind of. And so I actually did measurements, and I did them last year, so I used last year's sweater to help draft the pattern. One of the things that happened to Tink when she would wear this one is every once in a while her leg would come out of this hole and go into the neck. And so her head and her front paw would be sticking out. So that is why I chose to actually create sleeves on this year's version of her little sweater. And I may make a lot more after this because it was so much fun. So I used some washi tape to measure my leg hole for her. She's not a very big dog, so that works for her. So you can use anything you want to do your circle, and I have clipped in 2 places the fabrics folded over so that I only have to cut 1 circle and it will cut on the opposite side as well. If you're nervous about cutting through 2 layers at once, then you can just cut through 1 layer and then trace afterward, which is not a bad idea. So I'm just gonna, this is the Hold Light held onto this Minky, which would melt under your iron. Have any of you ever melted your synthetic materials beneath your iron? If you have, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. Tell us your story. Share your agony. So the nice thing about our Hold Light, and this is how thin it is, it doesn't even look like it is anything. And the non-shiny side is what adheres to the material. It's not an adhesive, it's a secret. We are not going to tell you how we make it so no one else copies us. We're the only ones with it. So you can see it has no stretch to it. And what that means is it is going to eliminate or lock the stretch in the Minky. So when you go to work with it, you can actually sew with it in a seam as well. But it's not as hard to work with as you might think. So I'm going to go ahead and cut through this and kind of try to look at what you guys are typing. Using my Appliquick little thread nips this time, as they have a nice point and it's nice to be able to poke through things with pointy tips on your scissors. Hi, Bev. Yes, it's a perfect thing for your Yorkie. Little short-legged dogs. Here we go. I have a camera right in front of me this time. Here we go. So last week, everyone said they liked having a split screen. Yes, Lorinda, we are represented on Amazon, just not of all of our products. As we can't keep up with sales on all of our products. So if we can't keep up with sales on something, we don't have it on Amazon yet. Some, like this stabilizers, will be added gradually, but right now our stabilizers are so popular, especially our stick and tear for using for masks. So see how we have that perfect little circle and it didn't fray? So no more being afraid of the fray. And know that our liquid-based glue will also stop fraying. Someone mentioned that last week. She uses our liquid-based glue as in place of fray check. So I'm going to cut the other circle, but before cutting the other circle, instead of just cutting it, you can draw a circle on the fabric so you know where to cut. And open it up and cut it. I think I can see that good enough. There we go. I can't wait until we no longer talk about masks. Won't that be nice? By the way, did you guys feel that it was too loud? The music for the 3-minute pause or 3-minute lead in before I start, was that significantly louder than my microphone? This is the first time you've heard of my Hold Light. Lorinda, I use this on the back of all of my applique projects. It locks the bias of the material, and it's also a really slippery stabilizer. So if you want to do an applique like my owl bag, and there's lots of little tiny circles on that particular pattern. All of the other stabilizers that are used to back the main body of your fabric kind of stick to the bed of the machine, whereas this is so slippery that when you're sewing with it, it will just slide on the bed of the machine. That means that when you're working with a circle, you can go around a circle without having to stop and bring your needle down and pivot and stop and bring your needle down and pivot. It was fine on the music? Good. That's good to know. We are almost like operating like a real show here. Make sure I have the same size hole because we don't want to make it harder for Tinkerbelle to walk on one leg than the other. So definitely better to just draw your circle on the stabilizer side, and the pattern will make that possible. Look at how little I made that hole in comparison to what it should have been. So better to do it using the pattern. And I'll be helping you guys to the best of my ability, depending on the dog, to determine what that circle should be. Sorry for bumping the other camera. Our vinyl I used last week, so our vinyl isn't sticky, but yes, you can, you know what? I can try right now. Should I see? Oh yeah, I think I have some really sticky vinyl. Because sometimes if you've ever tried to sew with vinyl, it sticks to the bed of the machine. And when we make a buttonhole on naps, like nappy fabric, like terry cloth and sweaters, you know how the stitch just can't form on it? So what I'm going to do with you today, since I would like a buttonhole on my actual, on this one, because the other one I winged it, and this time I want to make one so I can use it to walk the dog. All right. I'm just going to turn the iron off because one day we'll have it set up for ironing to be handy. But basically, you use a silk setting on the iron. And no other fusible stabilizer will bond to your material with such a low temperature. And that's what makes it so great for working with acetate material, acrylic, and vinyl. And oh, I was going to try the vinyl. Let me do that really quick. Because I have some sticky vinyl, I think, handy here. Right here. This one was already open. Most of our vinyl is not sticky. And this is used in an embroidery machine, so it really didn't matter how sticky it was, but let's see. This is our embroidery topper. And it comes in 16 colors. It blocks the surface of the towel that you're embroidering on or monogramming on, and prevents the thread from ever popping through the stitches. So even after it's washed, it stays in there. You can go to creativefeet.com to purchase anything, and in the description, if you're viewing on YouTube, in the description, there's a whole bunch of links already there. I'm getting better at this. Usually I wait until after and put the links in there, but this time the links are already set up in the description. If you don't see, you know, when us YouTubers say in the description below, it doesn't show up when we're in a live chat. So after the video is over, then you'll be able to look at the description. And inside of the description is a long stretch of links of all the a variety of different things that I periodically use in each of my videos. Let's see, what else did I want to say about that? Oh, and you may not see those links because if you just look for the description, it doesn't say description. It says see more, and then you click see more, and then you get this extended description of the video. And I also afterward watch my live feeds all over again, and I break it down into chapters. So inside of the see more, you'll see time code and each particular part of the video broken down. So if you don't want to come back in and listen to me talk nonstop for the first half hour or so, then you can just pop back in and go right to the sewing part. And hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for you. So the hold light comes as a flat fold, and it can't melt onto anything. And we're testing because someone brought up the vinyl, using it on vinyl and seeing if vinyl will be less sticky, because it does stick to the bed of the sewing machine. See how it's sticky? So now I'm going to iron it quickly. And I'm using silk on my setting. I'll just move you slowly so you know I'm telling the truth. My phone has a cord. It's amazing what our cell phones can help us do. It's my high-tech iron. Tell you what, I've had all kinds of really fancy irons and succeeded at breaking all of them. So this one I have not broken. Shiny side to the iron, and it goes against logic for me. I always want to do it the other way. Let's see if I can't bring this camera down a bit. Oh, and there you can see Tinkerbelle sleeping on her little station. She's always with me. So if the hold light is sticking out and it's going to get on your ironing surface, just a split second. See that? Silk setting and split second, and it's adhered to the actual material. So now we're going to go over. Try not to make you dizzy. And look at that. It's no longer sticky, and I'm applying heavy pressure on that. So there you go. There's the answer to your sticky vinyl projects. I have never done a buttonhole on this machine. In fact, I haven't done a buttonhole in so long that I'm actually nervous to do one in front of you. You're waiting for your cover-up to come in, Tina? It's gone. I think it's shipped. We just have trouble keeping up. I apologize for orders not getting out right away. And during the holidays, I try to have a day off. I have not had a day off. We just got too much going on. We're building a brand new website, Creative Feet site. So while everyone else is taking off New Year's, I'll be working really hard all day tomorrow. And that's good. It's my fault. So I'm going to try to make a buttonhole. And I say try because I haven't done it. The sewing machine that I have, and I'm thinking that a keyhole buttonhole would be the best option for a dog particular, because it has that rounded end on the end, so it probably will last longer. You can see how it's supposed to stitch out, and the zigzag stitch goes around in this case, which makes it stronger. And but I haven't done one, and we'll see. And generally you use one of these button feet, and this is the one that comes with this machine. And you would know the size of your button, or you can insert your button into the foot to determine the size of the button. That's what this is here. It's been so long. I can't get it to move. There we go. So you can hear how that moves up and down. I got lots of buttons. Of course, we're not making a button. Where'd all my buttons go? Have you ever cleaned up your sewing room and then you couldn't find what you couldn't find anything because you put it in a different place? Well, that's what I did with my buttons. My bag of buttons. Silk setting, yes. You could probably even get it to fuse even on a lower setting, on the very bottom setting of your iron. So that's almost not even hot. It's not really hot at all. You could touch it with your finger and not burn yourself. You can consider the size of what it is that goes through, and this one, all of this will go through the buttonhole for Tinkerbelle's. And she's so skinny that some of that will probably come out as well. And this just stops her from pulling. Even though she's a little itty bitty thing, she pulls. She's a tough dog. She thinks she's the biggest dog in the dog park, and I can't take her to a dog park because of it. So I think I'm going to go even bigger on the button. Got a big one in here. Here we go. So you insert the button in like that. And that is how you get the right size button. Cool, right? And then it's going to sew, and it's going to go backward, and it's going to zigzag over, and it's going to come back. So I got I wound a bobbin beforehand. It'd be good for me to actually see how it's not taking the foot. There we go. Does anybody know how to do this? You can tell me how to do it. I should see what it's going to do before sewing on the actual project, which is always a good idea, but I'm pretty sure that you pull it forward and then put it down. I'm sure there's someone out in, some of you have the same machine and you're saying what to do, but I can't hear you. Where's my thread? So do any of you have your sewing machines on right now? Are you sewing along with me at the same time? Making anything? About 3 years ago, my friend Terry and I sewed in the new year live, and we were on for 6 hours. And I said, I'm not going to ever do that again. Have no fear, but am I right, Barb? Am I supposed to bring the foot all the way forward? Because I haven't done it in so many years. I used to not have to read directions. The way to find out is it should just tell you, because we have this computer. Just start sewing. So, but am I supposed to pull it all the way forward? That's all I need to know. Or should I just let it spring? Oh, it is all okay. It's probably defaulting to that. So in the past, there was this very, very thick, knobby, open weave sweater. And one of my students said, I need to sew a buttonhole in this. And I'm like, that's crazy. So this is the only way I could do it, was to not just have it on one side, but have it on both sides. So I'm going to actually do one buttonhole with it on both sides of the material, which I have here. And then I'm going to do a buttonhole with it only on one side so that you can see the difference. All right, so I know that I need to bring my needle down and get the thread into the opening. There's something about the new year that makes everybody want to organize their sewing room, right, Mary? Okay, here we go. This will be, I'll either be representing the Baby Lock Company well or not. Oh, I have to lower this thing. Okay, am I ready to go now, machine? Well, isn't this wonderful? And isn't it fun to let go? So you can hear it snapping through, but it doesn't damage your needle because it's not paper. It's not porous. This stitch goes straight up and down. So what that's doing is it's locking the bias in the stretch material. This is definitely a good option for what we're going to use it for, so that your sweatshirt won't wear out at the buttonhole. It's always fun to watch things happen without touching. You can see how beautiful that buttonhole turned out. Or maybe not. Not with this angle. Don't worry, I will let you see. See how perfect that buttonhole turned out? And now I'm gonna sew it. So for instance, if you were going to sew with it right side up, or let's just do it the way I would normally teach. Do it again. Seems to be struggling a little bit. Definitely not as straight. Ugh. It doesn't sound as good as well. Because some stretch materials stretch in all different directions. Ugh, it just sounds bad when it gets off the edge. There's nothing wrong, it's just me getting nervous. And I'll compare that. So, are those the same? I think that this one is definitely cleaner than that one. And then just to give you an idea of what would happen if you didn't have it at all on the top, which is where you need it the most. You actually, won't be able to see most of this buttonhole. And this is when it gets really tricky on cutting your button holes open, is if you can't see because the nap is too furry, it's real easy to cut through the thread that you stitched, and then you can't see the buttonhole. So this is definitely the best way on top and bottom. And the trick to not cutting through your buttonhole is to put a pin through right where the stitch is. There we go. And do that on both sides so that you don't cut through the other end as well either. This is the bottom of the buttonhole. Isn't that amazing how nice it looks? And then the seam ripper, which I barely ever use. I tend to use it more with my live feeds than I do when I'm sewing all by myself. And then you watch that little dot and try to keep it in between the two train tracks. But if you just cut like that, you can easily cut through. So you just come up and then cut. Now you know that you're not going to hit it. If I didn't have this camera in the way, it'd be better. I probably need a new blade. So go down and back up again. Sometimes it's not good to go faster. And then I'm going to cut with the scissors because my seam ripper is too dull. Where are my little Appliquick scissors? Does this sound like you guys at home? There we go. So I'm just going to cut the remainder with these. Sometimes it's just nothing like a little pair of scissors. Then you go and you pull it away. And you're just left with this perfect little buttonhole. So for those of you who were nervous about doing a buttonhole for your dog outfit, now you know that it's no big deal. And that'll be able to withstand all the tugging that my little vicious Tinkerbelle does. So where I need the actual opening is in the front. And so I'm actually going to just handle that by after I'm done sewing. I'm actually going to figure out where it should go by putting it on her. But I just wanted you to see how to do a buttonhole so you aren't afraid to follow the directions. So how do we handle Minky? Keep it from fraying. Number one, you can use hairspray. And then afterward, it just becomes soft again, just like you can run your fingers through your hair and your hair becomes soft again. And it has a nice little smell. Not really. Okay. The next part of the pattern is to cut your neck and your all the extra pieces, which I didn't have time to do before. So I'm just going to kind of show you how I wing it. And I really wanted to make this look feminine because everyone thought she was a boy because I made this out of blue fabric. So I was thinking about having this be the neck. So then people will have to guess. Or say, is it a boy or a girl? Isn't it cute how having dogs is kind of like having a brand new baby? People are afraid to offend you by saying the wrong sex for your puppy. Okay. Yeah, hairspray works really good, and you don't have to spray it everywhere, just right along where you know you're going to cut. Wait for it to dry so it doesn't make your cutting instrument dull or sticky. Okay, so we've done a buttonhole. And my machine comes with a spot for it, so always put it back where it belongs. Which way does it go? Can't go that way. It's gotta go this way. There we go. Put the button back in the button bag. I looked all over for a button for my friend who lost a button, and I had her button and I couldn't find it for like an hour. And that reminds me my needles are on the back of the machine, because I usually show you guys. And I do have a link in the description below on how to get this tack that I use for securing my needles to the machine. So I'm not going to be using these needles anymore. Now I'm going to switch to the stretch needles. So this is how I know what needle is still in my machine whenever I'm done. And then you can position it anywhere you want on your machine, and it just stays there until you're ready to switch needles. And the correct needle to use for this is a stretch needle, because it's a stretch fabric, but you don't want to use a real thin one. You want to use the 9014, because we're going to be doing enclosed seams. It's actually called a poster tack D, and you use it to hang things on your wall without damaging your wall that are lightweight, like posters. This was something that came out back in the day when I was hanging posters. Working with those who have visually and physically challenged has definitely opened up my world to using interesting things to make things easier. And one of the most frustrating things for people is not being able to see the top of the needle. So this eliminates you having to do that by just having that. And you can stick it anywhere. I actually was looking all over for that pack the other day, and it was back here. I could only see it if I was on film. For this, we're going to go ahead now and we're going to switch to the Satinedge Foot. No surprise there for any of you that have it already. But when we go and we're gonna cut the neck piece and the bottom piece, and the neck piece is smaller than the actual neck end. So we're gonna open this up, and you can see how I'm going to lose some of this. This is the spot between her little legs. So when you have your dog and you measure between their legs, you want to make sure that that amount is going to not make their legs spread apart while they're walking. And we're going to actually lose more than that, because we're going to sew it together first with that 1/8 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to sew over it again with a 1/4 inch and lock it all in, so there is no overlock stitching needed. So first, fold my fabric, and we want to make sure that when you cut the fabric for the neck and the hemline, that it is the stretchy way for the fabric. So this is just a quick little cheater way of cutting the length, knowing that you got the right length for that. Can be a little bit wasteful on your fabric to do this. You don't need to type anymore, Fiona. Thank you for participating, though. So, scissors. When I do trade shows and I demonstrate in front of people, I do this a lot. And people say I look like a cat pawing a pillow. So every time I do that now, I think about, yes, I do kind of look like that. I think I made Tinkerbell's sleeves a little bit too long. And she keeps looking at me going, well, what are you saying my name for? So this time I'm going to make her sleeves shorter. But not so short that she can stick her foot through the neck. Now I have the right length for both, or enough length for both the hem and the neck. However, on the neck, we want the neckline to actually be gathered in a little bit. So I'm gonna cut this a 1/2 inch narrower than that, and then however wide you cut this determines how big the actual collar is. And with Tinkerbell's current one, it seems to be pretty good. And if I could remember what I used, it doesn't matter. You're all so quiet. Are any of you going out tonight? Going to, despite everything? So whatever size you want it to be, however big you want it to be, you need to double the width of that. And this is 3 inches, so it'll be like 1.5 inch collar. There we go. I thought I was opening it, but I had not closed it. That's dangerous. I always cut before I pick up the ruler. I make sure that the fabric's cut clearly. And what you can't see is what just happened here. And this is another reason I like to use my hold light on the fabric first. You can see the nap of the Minky actually dropped into the slit cut on my board. But you can just pick it back up. So this is the fun of using Minky material. Whoopsie. Okay, and I need to cut another one for the other side, or for the hemline of it. Guess I'm making an exact duplicate of what I already did. Instead of the pink, I was going to do the pink. And the remainder of this is going to be her little sleeves. And you also want that to be the stretchy as well. I think I'm going to celebrate New Year's Eve with my dogs. And I don't know if my friend Terry's coming over. We have some sparkling pumpkin cider kind of thing that she bought. How do you determine the length of this? Is by measuring the diameter of that, or you can just kind of see, is it going to go all the way around? And when we go to actually do this, we can kind of fudge it and cut it before we sew it up. But it looks like halfway is going to work out. D, I actually paint all of my sewing machines. I'm the lady with the painted sewing machine. Tink's current sleeves are longer than this, so these will be a little bit shorter. This is my jungle themed machine. I do have about 30 different sewing machines that are painted different ways. I can tell you one thing, that my dog has not slept this good in a long time. It's almost, I think it's kind of like also a stress. You know how some dogs stress out? And the way this feels on her body, I think it actually soothes her as well. I really need something under my chair to make my chair move easier. And here's my glasses. Okay. Now you could actually sew and leave this on, or peel it off as you go. And the first thing that I did before was I did her little neck. So I'm going to actually peel it off and let the fuzz go where it wants. But you could actually leave it on the majority of it and just peel back a little bit. This is how I handle taffeta. On taffeta, I would just take it up as I sew. Take it up as I sew, and then it doesn't fray all over the place. Okay. The Satinedge Foot. This is the one I designed for Mary, who was born blind and deaf, and it has this little wire inside of the zigzag opening that guides for you. And what we're going to do is sew this fabric on here, and we're going to do it in a couple steps so that you have no exposed seams when you're finished. This is called a burrito roll, and it's used for sewing children's or anyone's pillowcases as well. Have any of you ever done that? Sewn a pillowcase and done the burrito roll? Can be a little tricky on the brain. So I think I know that my length is too long, and I need to cut it or it will not gather in like ribbing on a sweater. So I'm going to take off another 1/2 inch on both sides. So that's not quite, it's about 3/4 of an inch. So if you haven't done this before, it is really cool. You can sew your pillowcases together with it. You have to determine which side you want to be right and which side you want to be wrong. And both are really soft. But I actually put it so the softest side is on the outside. So I can pet her and it feels like I'm petting her. I don't know. I probably should put it the other way around so she's more comfortable, but I like the way it looks better. So I'm going to drop it in here. I'm not staggering this over despite it being shorter. I'm keeping the edges up with each other because what we're going to do is gather while we're sewing. Selecting a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and on my machine I know I can just go turn the nut, moving the wire all the way over to the right, and then select a straight stitch, left needle position. And your goal is to keep the fabric right up against the edge of this and this one as well. And while sewing, I'm trying to think if I'm doing this the right way. If I was supposed to do it the other side, I don't think it really matters. And I am going to stretch this just a little, ever so slightly, because it's only about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just pulling on this one, not that one, a little bit. That's why it's curling. And in this case, I don't use pins at all. I call this the finger planting method. So if you know this isn't stretched and you know this is, and then you plant your fingers about every 3 or 4 inches with it stretched, and then get that little curly to go back under. And you can see that it's actually, it may even need to be cut off a little bit. But this is based on the size of Tinkerbell's head. So we're good, even if it goes, if I stretch a little bit more than I should. So I'm not having to watch the sewing machine needle. I'm watching the front of the foot, which is in a stationary position. And that makes it much easier on your neck as well. Elbows down, shoulders relaxed. And I would be sitting straight if I didn't have a camera right in front of my line of sight. It's not good for you to ever tip your head to the side like that when you're sewing. You always want to keep yourself in line with your needle. Elbows down, shoulders relaxed. If you can't put your elbows down with the foot you're using, that is partly why your shoulder blades, you get muscle tension between your shoulder blades when sewing. Notice that I am not putting my hand back here and pulling from behind either. Let the sewing machine do the work. There we go. And how's that? We are right on for that ending. And then we go back, which I didn't do at the beginning, by the way. I didn't secure the other end, which is not a good habit, but it comes from doing a lot of piecing on quilts. Yes, the foot snaps right onto the Juki, Mary. I thought you already had our feet. Isn't that a nice, beautiful seam? And see how it is just a little bit of gather in there, not very much. Now, how do we get this to not have an exposed seam? Do I do this last or before? I'm getting a little nauseous from the magnifying glasses. Okay. Yeah, I definitely do it this way. So now we're going to do the burrito roll. And that's where we're going to sew right sides together again. That poor microphone. It's got a bunch of fuzzies all over it. So with the right side facing out, you take the majority of the little jacket And you could make a jacket for yourself this way as well. Definitely. I was actually thinking about it, and then I went, matching jacket with my dog. Yeah, maybe a little corny. If you, Donna, if you're not using my Satinedge Foot, then the 1/4 inch, the mention of the left needle position does not apply. It's only with my Satinedge Foot that you must have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Or you must use a left needle position to achieve the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Let me show you why. I try not to be redundant. I mean, every time I show this, I usually show this. And I realize now, some of you are not seeing every episode. So we place a measuring tape beneath the foot, and you're going to lower your needle down onto one of the lines on the measuring tape and move the wire on the foot, fuzzy on my fingernail. You're going to move the wire on the foot over to the 1/4 inch distance away from where the needle is. That's how we achieve a 1/4 inch seam allowance with this foot, with this guide then guiding for you instead of you having to look at the needle. Let me see if I can move to a little bit closer. It's just, there's a limit to what I can do with my cell phone. It won't let me zoom in either, so I thought it would, but it won't. So left needle position, and you bring it down on your measuring tape, so it's just sitting over it, not actually going through it. And then the foot has a little wire that's connected to the white part of the guide. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it when you're in there, but it moves. And so you place that wire 1/4 inch away from the needle, and you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If a pattern calls for scant 1/4 inch, you're not stuck. You can go scant, and you have a scant 1/4 inch foot too. Now this is just not a very precise project, so it doesn't matter if it's exactly 1/4 inch. If it's a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch seam allowance, your project will be a little bit smaller. And if your seam allowance is a little bit smaller than the 1/4 inch seam allowance, well, your project will just be a little bit bigger. All right. There will be filming sewing is just a tricky thing. No easy way around it. And if you've ever watched a video and they didn't show you the position that you would be looking, it can be frustrating, and I know that. So I'm doing my best to make it so you guys can see better what it is that you actually need to pay attention to when using your sewing machine. As most of you know how to cut fabric already. So what you want to achieve here is you want to make the body of the shirt as small of a roll as possible as you roll it up. And it was a little bit too big before. And then as you go, you'll see your seam allowance show up. And you want to take your seam allowances or seam allowance and line it up with the other end. So you are in essence rolling up the shirt like a little burrito into the roll. So raw edge to raw edge. And all of this, you want to make sure you don't catch anything but the seam allowance. So having a guide on the foot makes this a lot easier as well. And this is how you see, this is how if you look inside of a pillowcase, it has no seam allowance on the little fold on the edges of it. This foot is why I look so good when I sew. It's certainly not me. It keeps me guiding accurately. And I can't see it all. I have the microphone and the cell phone in my way. So let's see. I'm using what I see on the screen to guide me. Once you get it started, and it might be easier with it the other way. I can't remember. I only made one. This is why I usually make about 4 or 5 before I draft a pattern, so you guys don't have to do it the wrong way. Of course, this was one of the easiest things that I ever put together. I designed it and sewed it in less than an hour. I was actually shocked. And Tinkerbelle was very happy to no longer have that itchy sweater. So like many things, the slowing down is just keeping your fabrics in line and not sewing through the body of the shirt, only to have to rip it out later. Yes, this is the same technique used for making pillowcases, Better Days. I still don't know your name. You probably said it, but the chat scrolls up, so I have no idea. Come on, my fingers are getting a little sore. This reminds me of my Creative Feet Techniques video. The entire video was filmed this way with a camera and microphone right in front of me, and I had to, the tripod was in front of me, and so I would sit like this, and you didn't know that I was holding on with only one finger away from the actual foot while filming that, because the whole thing was filmed up close like you see on the right screen here. Tuck that all in. This has many uses, and what's really cool is this fabric won't fray it all apart because it hides the seam or locks the seam. It's called an enclosed seam. This is done a lot in high fashion. It's also how we used to sew before overlock machines came out. Didn't have a serger stitch to use. So here's the thing on Lorinda on when to use which of the Creative Feet. There isn't any particular instruction saying you must do this with this foot and that with that foot. The Satinedge Foot is going to be the foot you'll use for almost all of your sewing. For sewing straight seams or zigzag stitches, appliques. It's the one that helps you guide. As I can't even see the needle, I'm looking only there. Thankfully, I can do that with this foot. You can see all of this is a little bit smaller of a neck than the last time. So keep that in mind when you do this, that the collar of your shirt needs to be able to fit the body of the shirt inside of it for this part. And that will be written in the pattern that I will finish at some point, but right now we're on New Year's Eve. So this pattern has not been completed yet, as I made the shirt. Well, I made the shirt 3 days ago, but I have not had a chance to draft the pattern. So I think I might pull a little bit out the other end. No. That might help get some of that bulk out of there. This is really kind of a bizarre and absolutely wonderful thing to see on a pillowcase. It's like magic because it's just fabric, not fur. If the fabric doesn't feed, you don't want to shove it through or pull from behind. And I can see that I'm missing, so I'm going to go back a little bit. I can't even see my reverse button. Okay. We have an issue. And the issue is that I wasn't catching all of it. See that? So I think it's better to have the heavy stuff on the bottom and sew with the thin fabric on the top. Definitely easier on your hands for sure. So we'll just go from the other side. Fix it back up. Now you know what to do if this happens to you. And my little roll is unrolled inside. Okay, so mental note. Wrap the thin fabric over the thick fabric. A Hong Kong seam. I can do that with the Satinedge Foot as well. And I can't show you right now a Hong Kong seam, but I can save that for another episode. A Hong Kong finish is kind of like a binding. You bind the edge of really loosely woven materials, like woven, literally like a woven rug or a blanket. Definitely make your neckline big enough or your collar wide enough to fit your burrito stuffing. Letting the feed dogs do the work. I'm just pushing down to keep the fabrics together. What sounds like something a person should know, Lorinda? You mean I should write that in the pattern? I'm absolutely going to. Apparently, I just did it the right way on my initial project. That's why when I did the bowl cozy video, I did about 15 bowl cozies. A Hong Kong finish that people should learn how to do one. A lot of techniques you don't really learn until you have a project that calls for it. That's why I wrote my book and video in a way that you don't have to study or learn it. You use it. So then you just start pulling out the insides, kind of like you're turning a tube. And it is a tube, except for that. I got a spot here where it's not together. Definitely not a time to be lazy about closing up any spots you missed. My foot control is traveling again. Oh, it's the white cord. And the Hong Kong finish is not really included in the Creative Feet techniques because at some point I just had to stop writing that book. There's a total of 88 techniques combined with the book and video. Just 3 feet do 88 different things. They actually do a lot more than that, which is why I'm releasing or creating the Creative Feet techniques extensive inside of my school. And in there, we'll go in depth into each one of the techniques to give you uses for it. So you can decide whether or not you want to do it or not. Definitely 2 inches for the neck. And that's for Tinkerbelle's jacket. So if you're making a jacket for a larger dog, you actually may not want to even do this technique unless you want a really big neckline. I gotta get this out of there. Come on, where's my presser? The presser makes your thumbs really strong. It kind of becomes a thumb. So you're talking about a French seam and a French, yeah, this is a French seam that we will be doing a French seam in this if I can turn this right side out without destroying it. So French seams we're going to use for the final part of this. And usually you sew wrong sides together instead of right sides together. And then you grade down one side and make it smaller. Then you sew the next side 1/4 inch. But with our foot, because it's so easy to sew seam allowances, hallelujah, it's turned. I was starting to wonder if I stitched the actual jacket. All right, so now we're going to do the hem, and the hem is a lot easier But I did it small again, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to put you through that again. It's not big enough. No. What do you think? Is it too gaudy? Little polka dots. Bye, Donna. See you next time. Sorry I'm taking so long. I really planned for this to just be an hour. It only took me an hour to design it, but I wasn't talking to anyone. You know, I'm gonna, instead of doing, you just saw how I did that, and that's how you would do this side. Instead, I think I can't do that. I need to follow through. That's the right size. I'm going to use an 1/8 inch seam allowance, I think. Maybe it'll go better this time. One can hope. I have all kinds of fuzzy all over my face and floating through the air. You know, I have a special carpet that sits under my foot control, and it has Velcro underneath my foot control. And despite all of this under here, it still slips and slides. So you're talking about using a rubber band around the base of my pedal. Yeah. That would kind of do what the Velcro does, right? Most of this is because I have a shoe on, and when I wear shoes, I can't feel my foot control, and I kick it. It's winter, so it's too cold to just have bare feet. This time we're not stretching at all. Don't watch the needle, watch the front of the foot right there. And we're making sure that both the fabrics are touching the inside edge. And it doesn't matter how much it's touching, because the foot does the straightening out for you. I hope this turning goes quicker. But you guys do too. Have any of you made already some clothing for your dogs? Where's that remote? That reverse? There it is. It's even hard to find big rubber bands these days. Everything used to be rubber bands. Another way you could finish this instead, if you end up making your collar too small, or simply just don't want a really big one, here's another option. And this would be to actually so like this. We could actually wrap it over and do a top stitch, since this is the right side. And that's what I'm going to do. So you don't have to see me struggle with that. So I have my seam allowance right there, and I'm letting this fold over. And as it's folded over, I'm placing it right on the edge of the seam. And I'm going to move my needle over. You could also achieve that by moving the guide instead. So now we're doing a top stitch. And the Satinedge Foot does not stick to this material. Still going to decrease my foot pressure though, so that it doesn't distort by pushing down too hard on the material. And I'm just doing the finger planting every 4 inches. It's kind of dropping into the nap there. So fold it over, make it line up with the seam we already did. I'm going to go longer on the length, because I feel the need to push So whenever you feel like you need to push the fabric, increasing stitch length does that for you in a consistent way instead of us inconsistently pushing and pulling the fabric through. Who's apologizing? What are you apologizing for? If it's sad, I don't want to know. So you got a Labrador Greyhound mix. So that would be a fine haired dog too, right? Even the big puppies get cold in the winter. So this is an alternative if you want to have a small collar and you have a bigger dog. Make sure you're not stretching. And to prevent any stretching, use the liquid-based instead of just wrapping it over. You could actually put drops representing straight pins that you never have to use. And then just gently slide your finger across it. And then position that, and you would wait for this to dry. And what happens then is this locks the bias in the fabric, because this is not a glue, it's actually water-soluble stabilizer that's wet. And when the fabric, or when the water evaporates, it is in essence a water-soluble stabilizer bonding the two fabrics together, and it prevents them from giving in any direction. I've had a lot of people tell me that they use this in conjunction with their sergers, that they put their t-shirt knits together with this and then put it on the serger, and they don't get any puckering and they don't need to use the even feed. Puppy, which dog is that? Chase? Get over here. Come say hi. This is what, he almost knocked over the big camera. Come here, baby. Come say hi. Come on. Up. This is Chase, and come here a little bit more. There he is. And he is too warm to have a shirt, but he really, really gets jealous when I make something for her and not for him. Can you just lay down right there and not knock the camera? Looks like he didn't do as bad as he did last week. Last week, I had the camera all set up, and then all of a sudden, when I was watching it afterward, I noticed that the camera was totally in a different direction, and you couldn't see the things I thought you could see behind me. And it was because Chase had come in here and bumped the camera tripod and twisted it, and I just don't want to lock him in the bathroom or outside. Yeah, I love this project. I was going to do something else. I was going to do a beaded champagne carrier to bring for New Year's Eve, but since so many are not allowed to go anywhere for Christmas or New Year's Eve, I felt like it might be a bummer to show it. Yes. Notice how I'm stopping and raising the foot and stopping. It has these little bumps that kind of get stuck in there. So just lifting it up, not pushing it through, but just helping it go through. Another way to do that without lifting the foot would be to use the presser. And you put the presser right here. And now I'm sewing with only one hand. And this is really slippery, so it allows the fabric to slide under. It's a way of piecing, chain piecing really fast with the Satinedge Foot as well. Yay! Okay. That one went a lot better. See how pretty? And you have that way where you have just a little bit of stitch showing, and then as it gets worn, the fuzz, the fur on it covers it up and you can't see the stitch. Or you have your completely enclosed seam where there's no stitch on either side of the actual garment. But on this one, you also don't see a seam on that side either, see? Where there's a will, there's a way. I have all kinds of things in front of my machine that I should not have, so Hopefully you can't hear them rattling around. Now for the sleeves. Oh man, it's snowing Minky. Merry Christmas, everybody. Nope. Happy New Year, everybody. All right. So on this case, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the sleeve's going to fit the opening. And so you would make a tube sewing. So this is the width of it. That's how long the sleeve will be. And this is the width of the actual sleeve. So we're going to bring right sides together and sew a seam. I should have left the whole light on it. Then it wouldn't be blowing everywhere. And the straight stitch cuts through it and then it tears off. So you can leave it in while you construct with a straight stitch. Ignore everything else. Watch the front of the foot. Got caught on something. Let's see if I'm going to get away with it. Okay. It's kind of like a little bracelet. So if we turn it right side out and then fold it over, that's how you have your little sleeve. Once again, the seam is enclosed because you fold it over on itself. And this will be the only seam that we finish with a stitch. And I'm going to see if it fits the hole. And look at that. Spot on. First try. Yay. Okay. So now we're going to open this up and have right side out. Like it's going to be finished. Cut your tails. The furry side is the right side out. This is when my brain gets a little tired. Okay, so if I want it to fold like that and be sticking out that way, then you go like this and you take and open that back up again. And now you have right sides together. And since it's a garment, we don't really want our seam line just to end up anywhere. I usually have the seam line up so that it's going to go underneath the belly. And there's no free arm small enough for this. But the right way to do this would be to have it facing that direction so that you can have the guide fall off the edge of the material. And you just want to really pay attention as you go. Only sewing about an inch at a time. Oops, my thread's not in the needle. You know, I didn't have a name for Chase, and when I adopted him, he had a totally different name. And then when I went to take him, I said, "Come on, Chase." And I went, "Well, that's a good name for a dog." And he responded right away. So that's one of those magical moments. And it just so happens that he likes to chase balls. So the perfect name for a ball-obsessed puppy. I'm going to put my needle position back over to the left because it's a lot easier to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this. And then I stick my finger in and flip, lining up those two edges again. This is a little bit slow process. Thankfully, the sleeve's not very big. So a few stitches and adjust. Try not to stretch. Or what happens here anyway is this is cut so it's stretchy and this is cut so it's inconsistently stretchy because it's cut around a circle, so some areas are stretchy and some areas are not, which makes it more comfortable for the puppy legs as they're running around. When I first put this sweatshirt on her, She wouldn't, she was like walking bull-legged. And that's because she's never had a sleeve going down her leg. Now she runs around and acts like it's part of her. Here we go. We are all so quiet now. Looks like I'm only getting people from YouTube showing up on my chat right now. So if any of you are in Facebook, I don't know why I'm not seeing the Facebook chat. And I hope that I'm not ignoring any of you. My daughter had a beagle. Her name was Zoe, and she destroyed my house when she was a puppy. So now you could just finish this by doing a small little hem and having a long sleeve, or fold it in half as I did before. And I'm going to save her from walking like a bow-legged dog by having it be shorter than what she has. So she currently has one about a 1/2 inch longer. And you would do the same thing, go around one more time. I don't know how I did this in under an hour before. We're at 1 hour and a half. I didn't have any cameras on when I did it before. It's just the most delightful feeling fabric once you're done sewing with it. Can't hurt having two. I love these colors too, but apparently people associate them with boys and not little girl dogs. Teal is one of my favorite colors, if you can't tell by the sewing machine. This is the last day of 2020, everybody. Can I get a thumbs up for that? Yay. And may 2021 be much, much better for all of us. Remember, if you can't see your name and you're on YouTube, if you can't see your name, then I won't be able to find you if you're the winner for today's giveaway. I kind of twisted my fabric here. Stretched it too much is what I did. Okay. So one sleeve down, another sleeve to go. I can do that afterward, I think. Maybe not. Just gonna have to finish the whole thing. I hate making you guys wait this long. Speed this process up a little bit by putting both on at the same time. No. Fold the sleeve. Could have cut this stuff better too. Don't do as I do, do as I say. Hi, Nancy Kling. Where are you watching from? So the type of hairspray that I use is this spray-on Tresemme. You can get this travel size when you go traveling. A lot of that. Rather than using an aerosol, and especially if your dog happens to be in the room with you. I don't know what that says, Patricia. I don't know. I'm not cool enough to know what all of those words mean, or those letters mean. Oh, there's a thumbs up. You know, I don't really know how to tell you how to do that. Maybe Patricia can tell you how. And if any of you give me a super chat, which is giving me money for donations, I'll be able to see it after as keeping my eye on the sewing. I'm going to try to do this in one step instead of 2 steps. And to do that, I'm going to use the liquid based so that these 2 fabrics won't shift on me. I hope I don't regret doing that. It worked out really well before. So it's just a little bit, goes a long way. And now those edges will stay together. It's also a good idea to have the seam allowance open. This is working out pretty good with the cell phone. The other camera, for some reason, turns off. Now I could glue this into the armhole as well. However, it would take a little while for it to dry, and I'm not going to make you wait. So this is the belly. This is where the belly will go, and that's where the seam allowance goes. And if we're going to bring it through like this, that is how we want it. And when I go to sew this belly together, it's going to be really small, a lot smaller than before. But I felt like I didn't give her, I felt like I had too much fabric in between her legs on the other one. Come on, machine. So every 10 to 13 hours of nonstop sewing is how often you should be cleaning your machine. Like opening it up and getting out all the lint. Especially if you use cotton thread, because cotton thread has a lot more lint. In my former life, I was a sewing machine mechanic. I see. There's another finger that you can put up the size of the thumbs up. Is that how we feel about 2020? I heard a newscaster on the news this morning say every time she went by the picture of the 2020 ball in New York City, she would give it the finger, the ball. In other words, giving 2020 the finger. I probably shouldn't have told you that, but I thought it was funny. So, and I kind of relate to how she feels. All this for my little dog and for you guys. We are on the last step. All right. I don't know if I got myself enough seam allowance to do an encased seam. I may have to just show you how to do an encased seam without doing it on the jacket. And let's see. So you probably want to know how I will accommodate for this. I don't know. Isn't it cute though? It's already so cute. So when we do a French seam, you put wrong sides together first. I'm going to give it a go. We'll see if we can do it. Line up our edges. And instead of sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance and then cutting it down and then going over, I'm going to sew it smaller to begin with because I don't have any fabric to give away. So because the guide and the needle can adjust closer and farther apart from one another, and it still helps me sew accurately, I'm going to take this over. I'm getting a neck ache from trying to look around my cell phone. If you sew and you sit like this, that compresses the vertebrae in your neck and it does cause a lot of pain. And since my phone is in my line of sight, I'm doing that. I forgot how painful it can be to sew that way. And I can't see my reverse button. This reminds me of my customer that I invented this foot for. She was blind and deaf, so I actually blindfolded myself on and off, or periodically, or for a good amount of time, for about 3 months to learn how to do things without seeing. I wore earplugs too to try to take away both senses that she did not have. And it helped me to learn how to be in her shoes, so to speak. And so in my feeling about this foot is it's a gift from God, because I can't really take credit for the design. Here we go. It's just like magic. I can't see what I'm doing. I have no visible, I can't see it all through the microphone and I'm going to look at the screen that you guys are looking at. My hands look older. I'm getting older. Watching the front of the foot, ignore the needle, ignore the needle. Watching the camera. It makes me nauseous when I look at the screen while sewing. So we have wrong sides together, remember? And the whole goal of this is to not have a seam open. Now you see how it gets really thick here? So you can take a piece of similar fabric and make a little armrest for the foot. And see how it just took it right in there? Where's my presser? Did you guys see where my presser went? Here we go. It's not good for you to try to get your fingers in tight on something. It's better to use an instrument. And I don't really like stylists because they're pointy and they get stuck on the material sometimes. I'm not pushing. I'm just holding it down to keep it from getting stuck on the front of the foot there. It's taking it all on its own. The feed dogs are very strong. We don't need to help our feed dogs along. Well, we're coming to an end of this. This is your chance to double check. Make sure you didn't miss a spot. Like right here, I missed a teeny weeny little spot on her belly button. And while I do want an opening for the leash on this one, it's not there. So close that up. And what I've done here is a very, very tiny seam allowance. Let's see if you can tell how small it is. And that's on Minky. So if you've ever struggled to sew an accurate seam allowance on a regular cotton, it's not me that makes this possible, it's the foot. So now we're going to turn it inside out. You can see the inside seam. And this would be an opportunity to, remember, you don't want to put an iron on Minky directly. So this allows you to kind of press that seam flat. And the reason we want to do that is then we want to push it up, and this is chunky. So we're going to press it again, try to flatten it out. I want the smallest possible seam possible. I feel like I said that wrong. Did I say that wrong? It is almost the end of episode 6, season 1 of Fabrically Speaking. Can't find the thumbs up emoji. Looks like you found something, a penguin and a check mark. So now the goal is to sew your next stitch beyond the seam allowance that's in there. So we're going to exceed that raw edge and enclose it in another seam. To be accurate, you just move the guide away from the needle, and you can move the needle away from the guide, and then it will be consistently over that seam allowance. As long as you don't not put it under the foot at all, which is what just happened. And that's from needing to have a little armrest for the foot. put it. Oh, and by the way, if you don't know your foot can raise higher by pushing up on the lever, this is a good time for you to learn that. So when the foot is down, it's down. When it's up, the foot will lean to the right because of that weight of the screw assembly. When you want to get something beneath the foot, if it's too thick, then you push on the lever and you have to hold it up. Unless you have the knee lift capability on your machine, which I have, but I can't use it because I'm too short and have a machine too high. So position this to the right of the foot to level it off. Make sure we've got our seam tucked in. I just did it again. Ah! Well, these are the things that we edit out when we do a video where we edit. It's at the end of the hands, just above the clapping hands. That's the thumbs up. I'll give you credit for whatever you do toward the prize, which I will figure out within a couple days. Because for a period of time, I won't have access to the chat. It takes YouTube a little while to process everything. In better days, make sure that you get in contact with us. I'm so glad you were on today so that you can still be the winner from last week. Feel that seam allowance, squish it down, make sure it's there. And this is it. Completely enclosed, except for the sleeves, the armholes, which you could do with the hand needle if you really want to be a stickler. See how I lifted it up to get it up on that bump rather than pushing or pulling it through. Lift and do one stitch rather than pulling through. That's how you break needles, when you pull and push through. All right, we're done. I did it, yeah. So that's what it looks like on the inside, and then you turn it right side out. You have this beautiful little seam that disappears in the fur. And there's number 2 of outfits for Tinkerbelle. The same exact color fabric, but I'm going to sew a buttonhole on the front of this for her leash to go through once I put it on her and figure out exactly where the buttonhole needs to be. If you came in late, know that I showed how to sew a buttonhole as well on Minky. So you'll be able to watch this, as everything will be stored on my YouTube channel and inside my Facebook group. You can't even find hand section. Every time we go live, you'll get another chance to learn how to do thumbs up and stuff inside of the YouTube channel. And some things are easier when you're on a computer versus a cell phone. I don't have enough experience doing that myself, but I do watch someone, and I'll try it both on my cell phone and on the computer and figure out how to tell you what to do next time so that you guys can have more fun with your participation on the YouTube channel. And for those of you, again, watching from Facebook, know that for some reason the Facebook part of the chat just stopped feeding, so I can't see it, but I will go back and I will review any questions that you have and do my best to answer you within a reasonable time allotment. This is, yes, we have 2 outfits now, one for Tinkerbelle to wear. Even if one is dirty, she has a second one to wear. She doesn't wear them all year round. Right, Tink? What do you think? She's like, I don't know. You've been talking about me for a long time and I don't understand. I wish that Chase wasn't such a hot dog, because I know that he would absolutely adore wearing one of these. And I am going to be making some things for dogs that do have a lot of fur to make it so that we can not leave them out. One of the things I do for dogs is I make the little bandanas that you can wear around the neck. And we can add some metal beads and make it out of rock and roll fabric. So we have a boy-themed bandana to wear. And if any of you have any ideas on things that you would like me to show you for your pets, well, it's fun to sew for our pets, isn't it? You lived in Cottonwood? I feel like it's the cottonwood shedding season in Arizona where cotton just blows through the air. I'm covered in Minky, and thankfully it doesn't continue to fray after you've sewn it. I'm glad you enjoyed the class, Mary, and Barb, you found the thumbs up. Yes, you did. Thumbs up to all of you. Thumbs up to 2021 being better than 2020, which I can't wait to stop even saying. And with that, it's the end of season 1, episode 6 of Fabrically Speaking. I hope you enjoyed watching my new show, and thank you for being patient as we get better and better every week. And I can't thank you enough for supporting me over these last 32 years. Hey, it's right there and you can click it when you want it again. There is a bunch of Minky floating in my line of sight between me and you. And between me and you, I'm glad 2020 is over. And you all mean the world to me. I hope that you know tonight when I toast to 2021 coming in, because I think if any year I have never wanted to toast to the end of a year more, that I will also be toasting with all of you. I love you so much. And thanks for watching. Bye. Mwah.